Hi everyone, and welcome to the first online event of ThinkINchina. I'm Martina, I'm the program manager of this project since 2015. And if you're not familiar with our activities because you have never been to Beijing before, let me just give a brief introduction about our project. ThinkINchina was born in September 2010 in Beijing with the mission of organizing monthly events in the university district, bridging the Chinese academic community with an audience of international students. We create opportunities for exchanges, sharing ideas and knowledge about China with Chinese experts in the fields of international relations, economics, and social sciences. Of course, 2020, due to pandemics, we haven't been able to organize our normal events because the entire team is not in Beijing, it's scattered around the world, and also international students are not allowed back to Chinese university yet. We hope that for the second semester, so next year, to have again international students to come to Beijing, so we will be able to organize our events again. But for the time being, the fact that we cannot meet in person does not mean that we should stop talking about China. There's, a lot of need to keep talking about China to create a conversation and mutual understanding, especially in this particular year. And so we decided to move our activities online. We will organize a series of talks with Chinese experts, and then you will find the videos on our website, it is thinkinchina.asia, and on social media pages. And I list all the links in the box below if you're watching this later on YouTube. And for our first event, we decided to focus our attention on Sino-European relations, what has been going on in 2020, which challenges lie ahead, in particular, how the US elections have been probably changing the relationship between Sino-European relationship. And for doing so, for this series, we will have dialogue, so a Chinese voice and a European voice, and I'm really happy to have with us today these two renowned scholars. From China, we have Professor Cui Hongjian, that is the director of the Department for European Studies at the China Institute of International Studies here in Beijing. And calling from Athens, we have Professor Plamen TONCHEV, that is the head of Asia Unit at the Institute of International Economic Relations, and a European China Policy Fellow at Merics in Berlin. The format of our events will work as follows. We first give the floor to both the professors for about 20 minutes each, and then we will let the audience, those are online with us today, to ask the questions. And I was saying earlier, you can write in the chat for any questions you might have, but we'll keep it at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I let Professor Cui Hongjian to take the floor. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Martina. Especially, firstly, thank you so much for your contribution and a very good arrangement. Also, you did a lot. Anyway, because now it's very, informal, discussion because of the distance, okay, and then some technical problem. So anyway, I'm so happy to be here and try to share some viewpoints with all of the audience. And I got the the order from Madam say that we need to focus some topics today, especially from a Chinese perspective, on some very, I think, interesting and also very important issues. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. So I just have a very, briefly PPT, and I try to, answer some questions from Dina or audience about some very, very key issues. Firstly, how about the China-EU relations during their COVID-19 and even maybe post COVID-19? As we know, regarding to the China-EU relations, I think this year would be a very, very, I would like to say, crucial time. Maybe this year a turning point, maybe. But now the question is U10 or how to say a step up. I don't know, but we still, I think there are a lot of space of discussing. If we look at this, relations between China and the EU this year, today I try to share some points with you. Firstly, Sino-EU relations in 2020, and then how about its cooperation and the challenges for China and the EU relations, and then how about the Chinese perspective on its relationship with Europe. Of course, finally we need to take some look at the relations, especially maybe with a change of environment, especially the new American administration, is coming. So what will be the impact of this, new situation on China and the EU relations? Okay, so go to next. So if we look at these relations in 2020, some maybe major issues is firstly, how could China and the EU we do, and what we not do, but we should do, during COVID-19, especially its impacts. I think firstly we need to know that China is the first place of the happening of the COVID-19. So at the very beginning, according to my observation, the February, it's a time for most of the European countries, including the European Union institution, to give a lot of support to China, because at that time China was suffering the very, very big problem from COVID-19, from Wuhan to some other parts of China. And at that time, from most of the European countries, the governmental level and also civil society give a lot of support and also assistance to China. We got a lot of the equipment and also some medicines or some very, very substantial support from Europe. And then after the end of March, as we know, the WHO announced Europe as a new center for the pandemic. So at that time, China also tried to give its support to European countries, and including the masks or some equipment or some we call the experience sharing between the doctors from both sides and so on. So I would like to say this is a very major line for China and the EU relations this year. How could two sides to support each other to face the challenge from the COVID-19? But also end of March and also the beginning of April, I think there were a little bit of change of narrative. So now the next, I think, the event for China and the EU during the COVID-19 is a kind of a so-called narrative battle, named by the Mr. Borrell, the HR of the EU, EU's foreign affairs and security, and he criticized that China is doing something, especially to enlarge some its experience to fight against the COVID-19, and also some political system issue, and also some mask diplomacy and some other. So he gives a kind of conclusion that China is doing some narrative battle against Europe, and at the same time, there is another issue, is disinformation or misinformation. If we look at the European Union official website, started from April, we can find that the China and the Russia and some other few countries had been named as the resources, the major resources of a kind of dis and misinformation about the COVID-19 and so on. So it is a very serious question or issue for China and the EU during the COVID-19. And even now, I don't think it has disappeared. I mean, this kind of a kind of a debate, this narrative issue. And the third is during the COVID-19, both China and the EU, we paid a lot of concern on this industry and the supply chains issue, because according to my understanding, for China at the beginning of the pandemic, China also faced a lot of problem of the supply, a lack of masks, the lack of experience, the lack of bed in hospitals, especially in Wuhan or some other part of China. And also when Europe become the center for pandemic, I think also if we look at it, firstly some Southern European countries, including Italy, Spain, and some other, also the same very big problem. So at that time, we can find out more and more discussions within European countries say that, okay, it showed a lot of problem for European countries to have, sufficient, I mean, the equipment and also medical medical equipment and everything. So it gives a very big debate that if Europe countries should have its own supply chains and also industry for some specific equipment, including masks. So even at that time, they pointed out that China take a lot of resources and also the industry and the supply chain on the medical equipment. So now it gives a very, very big warning to Europe that Europe should have its own, supply chains on the medical equipment. So, and then this debate extended to other issue is European countries should diversify its supply chains, and also it will be fixed with another debate regarding to China is European Union or European countries should reduce its its dependence on China, especially on some industry and supply chains. And also second issue, I think that during and also this year is very, very important is, as we know that in the last year, previously, both two sides, and China and the EU, they try to do something more this year, because this year is the first time for the new institution of European Union. And also this year we have some very, very important event to happen, including the two summits, right? The named 27+1 and also 17+1. The 27+1, I think that you know that it has been proposed by German side, especially Chancellor Merkel. I think that Germany want to take the advantage or take the chance of the rotating presidency for European Union, especially the second half of the this year, I mean 2020, and to try to have maybe new pattern for exchanging or for communication with China. So at that time, it's try to have this summit between all of the member states of the European Union and China. And also from Chinese side, this year would be another opportunity to promote this China's CEC cooperation, which means that China and 17, Central and Eastern European countries, because according to the Chinese agenda, that this year China will host the summit. And at that time, President Xi will host all of the leaders from 17 CEC country. But as we know, because of the pandemic, I think that so far for China and the European side, for China and all of the CEC, we could not make it happen. I mean, for this summit. And also, regarding to the 27+1, another very important issue is the CAI or BIT negotiation between China and the EU. I think according to the original design, especially from German side, is this 27+1 summit should have some very, very active outcomes, including this CAI, as we know, the Comprehensive Agreement of Investment from European side. It's a definition from European side, but always from Chinese side, usually we call it the BIT, which means bilateral investment treaty, like that. So always it has been bound, I mean, from a German understanding that once we have a good negotiation on the CAI, and once we have agreement, and then we can have a 27+1 summit. But so far, not only because of the 27+1 summit, so far it has been suspended. And also another problem is about the negotiation itself. So far, as we know, because last year, the leaders from China, from European Union, from Germany, they promised that this year, I mean 2020, we should finish the negotiation of CAI. But so far, just 2 or 3 weeks to the end of this year, so far not yet a negotiation finished. According to my understanding, and also according to my, the message for me is now both sides is near to the end of the negotiation, but of course with some, I think the most difficult issue still on the table. For example, how about this labor's rights? I think always the difficult issue between China and the EU, and also some other, including the environment protection issue and some other. But I also got some, very positive message that so far both those sides, I mean China and the EU, especially the negotiator, they did a very, very, good job, and they also both sides try to, wrap up it this year. But of course, I think because of the time is so limited, there is another maybe possibility that the end of this year maybe will not be the 31 of December, maybe the end of the Chinese Lunar Year. So, which means maybe this negotiation will postpone to the January of next year. And I think the third is and also another very important issue on this relations between China and the EU in 2020 is, I think, a very, very important environmental factor on China-EU relations is American election, the political change, which means that, okay, there will be Mr. Biden and as the president and representing Democratic Party. So maybe for China US relations, for EU US relations, perhaps there will be a new situation is no Trump, but maybe Mr. Obama come back again. I'm not sure, but we will try to also continue this issue later. And another, I think, very interesting issue is 2 days before, the European Union issued a new transatlantic agenda. And I think that now it's a very, very unnormal this time for European Union to show a very active role, try to influence transatlantic relations. And certainly it will give some, I think, very complicated influence on China-EU relations. So please next. Okay, so if we have maybe a longer vision, we can find out some fields of cooperation and challenges between on China-EU relations. Firstly, I think still we should continue this cooperation on the counter COVID-19. For example, not only this time, as I know that some European countries are suffering the so-called second wave of a pandemic. So China also tried to provide some support on some, equipment, materials, some other. But another, I think, forthcoming, a very, very important cooperation is how about China and EU do something more on this vaccine exploration and also distribution. So far, I think because China joined the COVAX already, and also European Union is inside. So how could we do something more? Because if you look at this wider vision, just China, some European countries, and the United States, or maybe Russia, just a few countries or players, they can do something for this vaccine exploration and distribution. So how could those big players do something more to support this vaccine issue and to showcase the multilateralism? I think it would be a very big test for China and the EU cooperation. The secondly is the trade and investment. As we know, because of pandemic, and this year there will be a very interesting change on the relations between China and the EU on trade. As we know, in the last 16 years, the European Union always take the number one as the biggest trade partner with China. And China has been also maybe the same time, the same period as the big second biggest trade partner with European Union. But this year, there will be some change. The change will be that China become the biggest trade partner with the European Union, but the European Union become the second biggest. Because at the same time, especially this year, the ASEAN take the first trade partner with China. So maybe it would be a long-term tendency, because as we know before that because of the issue of the diversified trade and industry, perhaps that China and the European China have to maybe develop more, trade and economic cooperation with its surrounding, with neighboring countries. Also because of RCEP, the regional cooperation and economic partnership, it just inked days ago. It will give some more, reasons for China to have, the trade and some other with its neighboring countries. Maybe the similar things will happen for Europe because of the blockage of the resilience of supply chain or industry chain. Perhaps European Union will do something more, maybe with some regional countries, also some maybe Africa, some other. So it happened this year, but perhaps it would be a signal for long-term tendencies. The third, field of cooperation, obviously, is the climate and the environment issues. I think once we have a CAI between China and the EU, certainly it will give some more dynamic for cooperation between two sides on climate change and environmental issue. And another very important event happened this year is China, after European Union, Chinese government announced its goal on this climate change issue, which means that China will have a carbon neutrality in the year of 2060, just 10 years later than European Union's target. I think it gives a very important, consensus for China and the EU, say that okay, we can do something on this issue. And also important thing is next year, 2021, there will be another climate change conference in the UK. I think that would be a very good opportunity for China and the EU try to do something more. Regarding to some challenges, I think firstly, so far, I think this year the most negative impact on China-EU relations is the issue or the problem of a mutual trust. Just as I mentioned before, because of the narrative battle or some mis and disinformation issue, and also some complaints from the European Union side on China about the Chinese diplomatic behavior or some other, and including some human rights issue and so on. So this year, I think the big problem is we have to say that the reduction or the destroy for the mutual trust between China and EU. And then, yes, some very difficult issue. I found out the how to say this conclusion from some European media regarding to the 3H, which means Huawei and Hong Kong and the human rights. So Huawei, yes, it gives a lot of especially in China, a lot of discussion about Huawei's fate in Europe, because as we know the long story between Huawei and the United States. But this year, I think that it will also give a very deep impression for Chinese people, say that Huawei is suffering in European countries. And also Hong Kong issue, as we know, especially after Chinese government, after Chinese legislative institutions have this national security law in Hong Kong, I think it gives a lot of the response. There are a lot of response from European side. Another human rights issue is the Xinjiang, the Uyghur issue. Now, all of them are very difficult issue between China and the EU. And also finally, last but not least, is a so-called regional security issue. As we know, this year, 2020, very, I think, a concern from China on the Europe is Germany. I mean, the rotating president of the European Union and the biggest economy in Europe Union, Germany launched its own Indo-Pacific strategy or guideline document like that. So it gives, I think, maybe a message to China that to showcase its so-called geopolitical role of European countries and the European Union in future, maybe the Indo-Pacific area will be a new arena for European Union, do something more for European countries. So it will give some, more difficult or complicated situation for China, because as we know, once there are some more Indo-Pacific strategies from other European countries and even from the European Union, which means that on some, regional issue like South China Sea, like China, India, conflict on the boarding issue and some other, there will be a new player. I mean, the European Union or European countries will become a new player So how could China to deal with this more complicated situation with European Union? That would be very, interesting issue. So please next. Okay. So regarding to the China's perspective on its relationship with Europe, I think previously China has a very has a clear, basic preconditions or basic principles to develop its relations with Europe. Firstly, China regarded Europe as a big economy and also emerging strategic players in the international affairs. And also China regards Europe as the bloc, the biggest bloc of developed economies in the world. And also China regards Europe as a partner, but with long distance. So always China believed that between China and Europe, we don't have any, territory disputation. So which means that between China and Europe, we don't like the situation between China and Japan, because so far between China and Japan, between China and India, we do have some territory disputation, but between China and Europe, we don't have this. And another precondition is between China and Europe, we don't have any historic, problem. So once we try have these basic preconditions, there will be more simple and also clear relations between China and the EU. But I would like to say, so far, maybe in future, there has been some changes on these basic preconditions. Firstly, yes, we are not neighbors because we based on the, two different parts on the Euro-Asia continent. But because China is, emerging as a global power, and the European Union is doing the same thing, so which means that in near future, we will be neighbors. Okay, just like what happened for some, suspicions from European side on Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. If you take it as a so-called geopolitical, plan, certainly there will be some more and more, territorial issue between China and Europe. And also for China, I think the similar thing happened. Same thing happened is just like I mentioned, the Indo-Pacific strategy, issued by some European countries. I still remember when France launched its Indo-Pacific strategy. France regarded itself as an Indo-Pacific country. So I think, yes, we are facing a change, huge change or big change of some preconditions or some judgment before. And also another issue is economic role and strategic partner. Undoubtedly, at the very beginning, China regarded and also China take the importance of the European Union and most of the European countries as a very, very, important economic role. Especially, it's good for Chinese, economy, for Chinese trade, for Chinese investment. But gradually, both two sides find out more, functioning or some other roles beyond the economic field. So far, both sides try to have a strategic partner. But another question is, from economic role to strategic partner, indeed, there are some, maybe contradictions between them to some degree that perhaps from China's perspective, so far, China still take something, take a more, consensus on the economic side of European Union, and then it's a strategic, zone. So I think always, but from European Union side, maybe the requirement to China is China should take more importance of European Union as a strategic zone. So there will be a kind of imbalance in the perceptions from both sides. The third is just like I mentioned before, that now we have to run this relationship between China and Europe, not only just on the bilateral level and also trilateral level. I think the trilateral level, firstly, means China, EU, and US. And then we can have some other trilateral pattern, for example, the China, Russia, and Europe. Okay, so bilateral and trilateral, how to keep a balance between the different level, and I think it's also a big test for China and Europe. The third is regional, which means that now China is the biggest economy and hub of economy in Asia and the Pacific region. But Europe is also the similar, position in Europe. So how could China and Europe's cooperation do something more especially positive one to the regional cooperation? As we know, there is the ASEM, the Asia and the Europe dialogue. And so far, unfortunately, China and the European Union, we try to do something, but so far a few, achievement for this regional connection and the regional cooperation, between Asia and Europe. Finally, the global level. Global level, now both China and the European Union, we try to take some leading role in some global issues. For example, the climate change, especially in the background of the Trump administration withdrew or retreated from Paris Agreement. It looks like gives some space for China and Europe have some more cooperation on climate change and some other global issue. But so far, I would like to say maybe some hesitant from both sides, limited the space for cooperation on global issue. The fourth points on this China's relationship with Europe is how could we deal with this the perception issue or the mutual trust issue is, as we know, last March, the European Union had its strategic document on China. It raised firstly the new definition about China, the two partners and the competitors and the rivalry. So it gives so far it gives a very difficult problem for China how to understand what's the real meaning of this new definition from the European Union on China. So far, you can find that China always try to convince European side that so far or maybe in future, always cooperation will be the major part for this relations, not a competition. Even China recognize that yes, we do have some competitions. For example, in some industry, in some sectors, but it's not the all. It's not the whole. So we should keep the cooperation as a mainstream. At the same time, we can try to, manage the competition between two sides. But now it looks like European side try to have this competition as a, mainstream. Even some time ago, I read a report from Mercator, the think tank of Germany, say that in future, the relations or the major part or the mainstream for China-EU relations is a principled competition. So I think that would be a kind of disagreement between China and EU. is how to look at each other. The other related issue is the consensus and the differences. According to Chinese logic, is once we have more and more consensus, it shows that we have less and less differences. But now I found that from European side, the logic would be that once we have more consensus, it could not help us to reduce the difference. The difference is still difference, which could not be, take place by the consensus. Okay, so very interesting, logic issue. So please next. Okay, very, fresh issue is Sino-European relations with the Biden administration. I think now the question is, yes, we discussed some issue before. Is was it a G2, which means that if we look at the Obama administration, the proposal from United States to China is China and the U.S. should have a G2 pattern to deal with international affairs. Of course, it has been refused by China. And then we have a discussion with the so-called G3, which means China, Europe, and US. How could we, have a new leadership on especially global governance and so on? But now the question is G what? So I don't know. Maybe a shift of international order will give some very, very interesting, change on this bilateral relations. And now I think the current issue for China, US, and the EU is once there are a kind of a real alliance between European Union, between European countries and the US, and once there are more, knowledge from a European side on China to take China as another Soviet Union, I think there will be a risk for so-called new Cold War. But also at the same time, especially from China's side, once China believes itself, just like itself always announced that China tried to push forward the new world order into a multipolar world. So once it happened, perhaps we will have a G3, or we have a G3 plus one, we have a G4, and so on. So it depends on how could we try to, believe, and also how could we make it happen. And finally is now I think the question is, once we have a Biden administration, what will happen firstly for American policy towards China? Now, according to some very preliminary, analysis, is perhaps the Biden administration will change some, policy from Trump administration. For example, it will take some softer instrument. Okay, there will not be some more unilateral behaviors from new American administration. So it will give some space for China-U.S. relation, and also same thing happened on the U.S.-EU relations. Especially we find out a new agenda for transatlantic relations issued by European Union. It's trying to get some more resilience and cooperation with the United States on all of the fields. But I think that maybe in near future, in the next 4 years, firstly, because there will not be a big change of the principle for the principle of American foreign policy to China. So certainly there will be more and more political struggle, which means that some more ideologic confrontation, because so far, still, United States and the European countries, they try to find a joint stance towards China. Is always there is a competition between so-called democracy and authoritarian. So once it happens like this way, certainly there will be more political and ideological confrontation. But at the same time, I think that especially in economic and some global affairs, we do have some more cooperation, but also at the same time, we have some also economic competition. But hopefully, once there is a Biden administration, the risk of decoupling on China-US economic relations, I think it will keep reducing, and also it will also give some more space for European side to have its stable cooperation, economic cooperation with China. Finally, is geopolitical and security challenges. I think still in the next 4 years, Asia and the Pacific region, especially the neighbor, the surrounding of China, still high risk areas. And of course, I think now it gives a very big opportunity for European countries and for European Union. I think once the European Union try to play a more constructive role in no matter it's Asia Pacific or Indo-Pacific on security and economic and some other, it will give some more space for European side. But if European side just to come to this region and to be part of this so-called American-led alliance, I think it will give some also negative impact on China-Europe relations. So I think it depends on the decision of some major member states of the European Union and also European Union institution. Okay, so I think I should stop here, and I'm looking forward to more exchange with you. Thank you.